Here's the deal. I'm not going to start off with the peace greeting, and I think the reason that I'm not going to do so is very, very self-evident. Um, I would be a fool to try to start off with the peace greeting with what I'm about to say and with whom I'm addressing. I'm just going to make it very plain. I am addressing you colorism crybabies and you swirlers and divestors. Um, it would actually be hypocritical of me to try to speak to you peacefully or to start with the peace greeting. I've heard your hypocrisy and I'm sick of it. And I've been sick of it. A lot of people are. After George Floyd got killed, I knew that y'all were going to say, okay, don't march for him. And granted, I disagree with what his fiance said. And I disagree with Christian Cooper telling us to forgive Amy Cooper. This is not really about your forgiveness. This is about blasphemy. Because when these people do these racist things like what Derek Chauvin did, the other cops that helped him out, or like what Amy Cooper did, they're doing it because of a belief that God made them superior, as if to say that God is on their side and God is just as racist as they are. You colorism crybabies are sitting up here coming at us with this hypocrisy. The truth be told, you feel slapped in the face when any of these men is with anyone other than you. The thing is that there's never been a time in which black men have said that they were refusing every other woman. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The fact remains that really most of you that are saying this about George Floyd are just upset that George Floyd did not sit back and wait on you and your hive to collectively approve of him. That's really what it is. Now, I'm all for, believe me, I'm outraged too. I think that the others should certainly spend life in prison. I believe that Derek Chauvin, because of his record and because of what he did, I do believe that he should be burned. And in Islam, we're not in favor of using fire to punish people. So it is a very rare instance in which I would say that someone needs to be burned. But I do believe he should be doused and that he should be lit aflame. And then after he begins to scream, then maybe he should be shot in the head to put his punk ass out of his misery. I don't just believe that he should be brutally killed for this. I also believe that any white person and any nigger, white nigger or black nigger or spick nigger or chink nigger, anybody who says get over it should suffer a similar fate. Maybe they should be killed by two pit bulls or something. Because as far as I'm concerned, it is blasphemy against God to say that black people don't have a right to be angry. But there's something I want you colorism crybabies to understand. First off, you're sitting up here and you're saying that George Floyd should, that there should be no protest involving black women because he had a non-black woman. That's about the stupidest stuff I've heard, because see, when it came to Corinne Gaines, we black men were outraged. And we didn't look and say, well, look at the men she'd been with. The same thing with Sandra Bland. We were outraged because we had exposure to these cases. Now, there have been black women and black men that have been killed, and we simply didn't hear about it in the news. I don't blame you when you didn't hear about it. You didn't know. But when a black woman is killed and black men and women don't hear about it, you colorism crybabies are quick to use that as some sort of evidence or sign that we just don't care, when in fact we may simply not know. Shout outs to Assalamu alaikum, Eugene Turner. Shout out to you, man, of tomorrow. Glad to have you in. It's an honor when you two show up. You colorism crybabies and divestors and swirlers, what you're really saying is that no black woman should march because George Floyd had less of a right to live. And he had less of a right to live simply because he found somebody else and he didn't wait on the sisterhood to approve of him to have a satisfying heterosexual encounter. That's not how this works. That never has been how it works. We didn't question Sandra Bland's history and who she'd been with. We didn't question, we haven't questioned Breonna Taylor. When we heard about the case, a lot of us were just as outraged. It's just that Ahmaud Arbery's case was more covered than her case was. And also because, in fact, there was a warrant for, it was a no-knock warrant. So the police, for whatever reason, actually thought that they got the right person, although they were still wrong. And yes, we were glad when that guy got off. That doesn't mean black men didn't care that Breonna Taylor had been shot. But see, this is something that kicks up every summer, first off. These things happen, I've noticed, every summer, but Ahmaud Arbery's case happened in February. His shooting happened in February from what I read. Might have been January, but from what I read, it was February. Whatever the case was, it reached me, the news of it reached me here in the Middle East after the weather had already begun to warm up. So as far as the weather goes, it was already summer here. The point I'm making is that every summer we deal with this. We deal with multiple police killings that are extrajudicial and other racial conflicts that are armed. And what I'm beginning to hear more and more every summer is, well, should we even care? Actually, I should say every year. I don't remember what time of year it was that Stephen Clark got killed. I'm not sure. And yeah, he did say something about dark women bring bad luck or dark luck or something like that. And that was some foul stuff for him to say. And at one time I overlooked it when Sister said we're not marching. But then again, I didn't know half the things that I didn't know at that point, half the things that I know right now. And while I would not have made a statement like that about women based on shade, because I go after culture, the fact remains that now you have men who did not say anything like this. And sisters are saying we shouldn't march because they don't care nothing about us. When in fact, the cases don't really get the coverage. We pretty much respond to the coverage, which at the very least is responding to stimuli. At least it's that consistent. But what's really going on is a lot of you colorism crybabies are sitting up. Sorry, I kicked the table. A lot of you colorism crybabies are sitting up here lying, and you're saying that Becky's not even out there fighting for you. No, let's get this straight. George Floyd's Becky is not out there fighting for him. That's true. Christian Cooper doesn't even have a Becky. From my understanding, he's involved with a Chad, or he's involved with another dude, from what I heard. And he started talking this forgiveness stuff, and maybe she's not really a racist. No, she's a racist. And because he's alive, that's why I'm not necessarily that outraged. And I'm not calling on anyone else to be that outraged per se. See, the issue here is not really about loyalty to each other as much as you think it is. It's more so about understanding who the enemy is. And when I looked at these videos and the footage, what I saw was that when it came to just rioting and looting and not even protesting, everybody did it. White women, white men. Black women, black men. And when I say black women and black men, it was black women and black men of multiple bloodlines within our race. In other words, East African or Bantu West African, from which we come. Both genders. Everybody was doing it. Additionally, when it came to the protest, I saw that everybody's out there protesting. White men are doing it. White women are out there protesting. Black men and black women. Everybody's outraged except for the colorism crybabies, because for you hypocrite B words, and the only reason I'm not just outright saying it is because I don't want to wake my neighbors up with foul language. Everybody's outraged at a murder except you colorism crybaby hypocrites, because you believe that if a black man finds a source of satisfactory heterosexual encounters outside of black women that we already know, I'm talking Western black women, that we already know are the second harshest or harshest judges of their men in the world, then you think it's okay for him to be murdered. That's really what's going on in your minds. Never mind the fact that you're going to sit up here and run after not even just non-black men, but never mind the fact you're going to run after specifically the white man, the one that broke our people in the first place, and everybody else. You don't, when you do step out, you don't step out even based on who likes you. You step out going specifically for the ones who look up to you, or look down on you the most and look up to you the least. Because where do you go when you do step out? You run straight to Mr. Charlie. If he doesn't want you, then maybe you'll catch a flight out to Dubai and let one of them take a dump on you. They don't want you. You might be willing to consider a Chinese guy or a Korean if he got at least a middle class income. These are all the ones that cannot stand you. You might even give an Indian man a chance. You know how they feel about you. Same with a man from Pakistan or Afghanistan or Iran. The ones that don't look at you like you're equal to any other woman in the world are the ones you give a shot to. But then when the man comes from a neutral background that has no problem with you, you automatically look at them like they're just not good enough. So what you're really saying is that it's okay when you go and chase after only the men that don't consider you equal to any other woman in the world. But if one of us men finds some other woman that's not you, then it's okay when they do get murdered. And make no mistake about it, it's murder. You see, Norris and Greenhouse in Louisiana are still in Angola. They've been sent, I think, for 28 and 40 years, respectively, if I'm not mistaken. They got decades. And the way that they wound up in that situation was that they actually shot at a car that a white suspect turned and aimed at them. First, he was fleeing. They didn't shoot the guy when he was fleeing. They shot him when he turned the car back towards them. They didn't know that his little boy was in the car with him. So it was that father, that suspect, that got his little white son killed. He's free. Those two officers that fired because he turned the car towards them and didn't know that the boy was in the car are the ones that are in prison for the murder instead of that father. Now, if you switch the races up and it's a black father that's a suspect with his black son in the car and two white cops shoot at him while he is fleeing from them and they kill the boy, he still goes to jail, not only for whatever he was fleeing, but for killing his own son. We know how this works. Everybody in the world, look, I'm sitting up here in an Arab country, and Arabs used to not have any sense of racial justice when it came to black and white, except that black people shouldn't be killed. That was the only thing. They didn't hate us and they weren't violent. And that was their only saving grace, their only redeeming quality with us. We could sit, we could have coffee, and there would be no racial violence, but they would refer to us as slaves until I retaliate by calling them terrorists. And when I call them terrorists, I don't apologize for it. I'm not capable of that. Oh, you hurt my feelings. You tragic desert mulatto, I'm supposed to hurt your feelings. You call us slaves, and then you try to justify it. Trying to justify it is worse. That's actually blasphemy. That's actually insulting Allah. That's saying that God himself made us this way, as if he's a racist. So now you're blaming God for a human sin. No apologies for what I would say to them. But yet and still, they don't have a concept of racial violence, regardless of what a lot of some of these super hoteps, actually non-hoteps, but rather slow teps and no teps like to say. Not because they really believe it, but because they don't want to give up alcohol and pork chops and, well, probably white women too. Yet and still, these folks are looking at what happened with George Floyd because the video's out and they're saying this is some BS. America is in no position to teach us about freedom and human rights because look what happened. We know this is, I'm going to tell you what Arabs here are saying. They're saying, we know that if the races were opposite, the cop if he was black and he killed a white man, the cop would be in jail and he would have been killed by now. This is what they're saying. They're sitting up and they're saying this is some BS. They're coming to understand this. Now, if these Arabs that have to be reminded that we are their equals are seeing how outrageous this was, and then they saw it in 2016 too. Y'all remember that summer? 2016, 4 summers ago. Whoo! I'll never forget that one. If they can see how outrageous these killings are and how outrageous they were before back in 2016, then you colorism crybabies, how can you not see that it is outrageous because it is a murder? You are more outraged at him having a white woman than you are at the cops killing him. That's exactly what we have to say to these right-wing white conservatives at times. You are more outraged that property is being stolen or burned than you are that a man got murdered by a police officer and he wasn't even resisting arrest. We have to say to them, you rat bastard, you're not even human, because you care more about the property that whites own than you do about a black man's life. We have to say this to them. Well, if we got to say this to them, then what you think we got to say to you? While you are mad that he had a white woman, yet she probably approached him. But then you will actually go and pursue not just non-black men, but specifically the white man. And if you won't take it in whichever other man doesn't like you that much, that's hypocrisy. Straight hypocrisy. So that being said, go on ahead and tell the truth, you swirlers and hypocritical colorism crybabies. Just be honest about it. Just say, we don't want to march because we're bitter. We don't want to check our weight, our health, our attitude, our hygiene. We don't want to check any of these things that are under our control. We're just going to blame our frustrations with black men on whatever it is that we cannot control. And okay, we're going to use our phenotypes and our complexions to do that. No, see, y'all have already been told about that. Any black man in America has a hell of a lot more right to blame his lack of success with you on things that they don't control, like their height or their income or their shade for that matter. Because everybody knows you are the ones that are the harshest judges of things that men don't have control over. Everyone knows that. The Western woman is terrible about that. Men do not determine their height. Men do not determine how much money they're actually going to make. Now, a man can determine how much he won't make, but nobody determines how much they actually make. And a man can't sell his genitals unless he's going to sell it to another man, which most men are not designed to do. So men have limits to their income that you don't have, simply by virtue of you having internal genitalia. And yet still you're taking these factors and judging men. And let's be honest about one thing. I've said this is the Western woman that's a very harsh judge of men. And you're allowed to have standards. I'm not knocking you because you've got standards. I'm knocking you because your standards are mutually exclusive. They're based on things that men don't control. And most importantly, you're not even honest about them. That's why I get on your case about your so-called standards. But yet and still, you have options when it comes to men. And then you want to turn around and blame, you want to say that you're overlooked and mistreated and the least protected woman in the world because of the thing that you don't have control over, even though we don't even take issue with that. And then in reality, when it comes down to it, behind closed doors, and the studies are done and the surveys are done, we realize that no, you're actually judging based on things that men don't control. And then to make matters worse, the Western woman is doing this in general. That's not just you, but you are the only woman in the world to judge your men based on the most negative stereotypes of your enemies. You know what I mean? You don't want the thinking man. You don't want the classic man. You don't want that straight arrow man. You don't want the one that walks the straight and narrow. You don't want the square dealing man. You don't even want the one that's in the middle. You want the most negative. You want the most idness guy you can find. You want the niggerilla. That's what you're looking for. You want the one that acts like a park ape. You want the one that everybody else is afraid of so that you can feel safe. And then you got the nerve, when you don't find that type of guy that's willing to commit, you got the nerve to go and cry on these channels and then start blaming other black men that had nothing to do with it for the outcomes that you chose, for your irresponsible decisions and even your preferences. And now when a black man got murdered, then another one almost got murdered, what do you say? Let Becky fight for him. She's doing it. The one that he actually laid down with isn't doing that, we know. But the ones that never saw his junk, never touched it, are out there fighting for him. What that means is that they're not judging his right to live by him feeding their sexual egos. But you're saying that his right to live is null and void because he did not sit up there and feed into your sexual ego. He didn't sit on the sidelines waiting on you holding his testes being celibate. Now, as a Muslim, I'm only going to promote marriage, but I promote marriage for young people. The thing is, that's not how many of you feel. You colorism crybabies, you don't have a moral problem with fornication. You're upset that he found a way to get his rocks off that didn't involve your approval. That is some narcissism. That is some major egocentrism. I can't even describe how bad that is, but it's just open for the whole world to see, and it's so childish. Just go ahead and be honest. Stop lying about it. Don't say it's because you feel that your own men don't love you. No, just go ahead and say you feel that you're just mad because your own men aren't bringing the same gold home as other men. You're mad because black men have to actually live with the effects of being discriminated against. And as well as we have done, despite that, it's not good enough for you. Even when we do better, being discriminated against more than you. Even when we are sitting up here, yeah, Assalamu alaikum, Baleri. Thanks for dropping in, Minister Jap, and I mean that from the bottom of my black heart. So even when we are more discriminated against than you, and we do better than you, that's not enough for you. You simply have a hole in your heart that nothing is going to fill. And I could sit up and go through in my mind a bunch of scenarios that you want. Maybe you want us to go and shoot police officers and get away with it. Maybe you want us to go and shoot them and get killed in the process. I don't think either one would satisfy you. Whatever trauma you have inherited from what we've been through, it's left a hole that nothing is going to fill. Just be honest about it. Just go on ahead and say it. If we could fly and we were bulletproof, you would find something wrong to complain about. I would bring people on to this live stream, but it's time to pray and I'm going to have to jump off. But those of you listening now, you know what to do and you know what to press. Please hit that share button because this message is more important than the message. Let these colorism crybabies and hypocrites know that I said this about them. Thank you for listening. The blackest of the black, signing black out. Assalamu alaikum. And black heterosexual male power specifically because they don't like it.